And during Carnival season, many of them will host clients for viewing parties. Sounds like a lot of fun. Well, what about if someone falls or drinks too much and has an accident on their way home? No fun at all. We're joined live in our studio this morning by Mr. Tim Scott of Fisher & Phillips to tell us more about keeping your liability low. Good to have you here on our morning. Let's talk about that, keeping liability low.
You know, anytime you have a party of this sort, safety is the most important thing.
Yes.
And so, as an employer, as a business, you really ought to be thinking about those things before you have the party. Have somebody go out there and assess any potentially unsafe circumstances that might be there. And then understand that during the party, things can happen that might create unsafe circumstances. So you got to have somebody there who's watching the floor, make sure there's not beads on the ground, spilled drinks, those sorts of things to make sure that your guests are safe during the entire time they're there.
It's always good advice to have a designated driver when you know there's going to be drinking involved, when you know people are going to be, you know, partying, reveling, call it what you may. Always have someone whose responsibility it is to make sure that everyone gets home safely.
Absolutely. We know alcohol is going to be fairly prominent at these parties, and that's fine. You need to be thinking about ways to minimize potentially bad things that could happen. Never let somebody get into a vehicle after they've been drinking too much. Think about having a cab service available for them to take them home, or another more responsible employee to do that. As the sponsor of the party, you really have to be responsible for making sure that your employees don't get behind the wheel of a vehicle while they're drunk.
We mentioned that there are several companies along the parade routes. Let's talk a little bit about that. Companies supporting Mardi Gras, making sure their employees have a good time. Companies present, because we hear so much about tourists and families. A lot of people don't think about the companies along the parade route.
They really don't. And a lot of companies in New Orleans have taken great advantage of having balconies and having locations along the parade route. They have customers, clients, families come, and that's a great thing. They need to understand, though, that while they're there, it's the company. It's not just because it's off hours doesn't mean that the company's rules and policies don't apply. And so beforehand, you ought to let your employees know we expect sort of the same thing out of you that we expect during the work week with respect to policies like sexual harassment, those sorts of things. Those are going to apply equally during the...
All right. Tim Fisher, thank you so much for being here representing Fisher & Phillips. Thank you so much for being a part of our program this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right. And a drug used